All right, seeing at 6 p.m., I will call the Thursday, December 3rd, Truth and Taxation hearing to order. Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Member Corcoran. Can you guys hear me?
Member Corcoran's absent.
Okay. Make sure it wasn't me. Thank you. Member Ketto.
Here.
Member Olson.
Here.
Member Rayfield.
Here.
Member Rayfield is here. Member Tyson.
Here.
Member Tyson is here. Member Peterson.
Here.
Member Peterson is here. Member Luthner is here.
All right, showing all present, Director Martini, would you begin?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Larry Martini, and I'm going to share with you folks our Truth and Taxation presentation this evening. And along with this presentation, we're going to be able to have residents comment to us using an email. I'll put that up several times during the presentation, but what we are here for this evening is the public hearing for taxes payable in 2021. Minnesota state law requires that we hold a public meeting between November 25th and December 28th at 6 p.m. or later, and we need to allow for public comments. The vehicle that we're going to be using is our feedback email. And for school districts, they need to also present the current year budget and the proposed property tax levy. So the agenda for the presentation and hearing this evening is really threefold: putting some background information on school funding up on the screen, talking about the school district's current year budget, and talking about the proposed tax levy for 2021, and then public comments. If a member of the public would like to comment, please send an email to feedback@flaschools.org, and that comment will be read aloud by one of our board members at the conclusion of the presentation. This slide will pop up frequently in my presentation. I think I have it 2 or 3 more times, so that folks are going to know how they're able to comment for the public hearing portion of our meeting. But first, a little background on public school funding. This is one of the few items that the legislature funds in the state of Minnesota that's actually within the Constitution. And the Constitution states that the legislature will provide a uniform system of public schools and will make such provisions by taxation or otherwise, securing a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state. As a result of that, school district funding in Minnesota is highly regulated. The state sets the formulas, it sets tax policy, and it also sets the maximum authorized property tax levy. The only thing that school boards can do beyond that is to put referenda to the voters, whether it be for operating funds or bonding. And so those are really the only 2 ways a school board can influence funding over and above what the legislature sets. This creates quite a challenge, though, because since 2002, 2003, the state general education revenue formula hasn't kept pace with inflation. I've got a chart on the next slide that shows the lag using CPI. So, for example, here you see a chart provided by Ehlers Finance that shows we are short quite a bit when using the Consumer Price Index. If we'd actually been using the implicit price deflator, which tracks labor a little more effectively than the CPI, the difference is even greater. It approaches $2,000. Another significant factor for underfunding with school districts is special education. it is approximately 40% underfunded. And this translates into a shortfall of about $5,705 per each special education student. Now, the state has done some things in recent history, and they've had a finance working group that have begun attacking this problem, but a lot needs to be done. So as a result, school districts across the state have a growing dependence on referendum revenue. A decade, 2 decades ago, we're talking 65-70% of the school districts. Now, today, all Minnesota school districts have referendum revenue or local option revenue levy authority. And the average is $1,570 per pupil. Of that amount, $846 has been approved by voters, and $724 is state-determined local option revenue. Referendum revenue, including LOR or local optional revenue, provides about 14% of general fund operating revenue. Now, it's important to note that a change in tax levy does not mean there's a change in the district's budget. The expenditure budget is set by a number of state formulas, voter-approved levies, and whether or not a school district is using fund balance. So an increase in school taxes does not necessarily correlate to an increase in the budget. I also want to point out a difference between city and counties versus school districts. Both cities and counties operate on a calendar year budget. So the 2021 taxes provide revenue for their 2021 calendar year budget. School districts are different because their budget cycle is a fiscal year beginning on July 1st and ending on June 30th. So the 2021 taxes will actually provide revenue for our 21-22 school year. The budget related to these taxes will actually be adopted in June of 2021. So we'll shift gears now and talk a little bit about the school district's budget. We have several different funds based on the purpose of revenue as required by law. We show general, food service, community service, building construction, debt service, and other post-employment benefits debt service. Now, we've added a slide in here just to talk a little bit about budget implications of COVID-19 and enrollment disruptions that many school districts are experiencing. I believe as a professional that Forest Lake's enrollment projections were spot on. We actually lost less students than we budgeted for, which was not the experience of most public school districts. So for many, the adopted budget needs to be modified in a great amount as a result of change in operations for the pandemic and other mitigating aspects. But for Forest Lake area schools, we've really done well with budget, and so far we've got an increase in revenue pending and an increase in expenditures where the revenue increase is actually larger than the expenditure increase. So for the general fund, we had originally adopted a balanced budget, $77.8 million. Food service was a small contribution to fund balance, 3.8 million, almost 3.9 million in revenue versus 3.7 for expenditures. Community education, a balanced budget, 4.8 million. And those three are the operating funds for the school district. Construction has a fund balance and will have more expenditures. So that's what's contributing to having a total of all funds being larger than the revenue. So the expenditures for all funds, 99.8 million, revenue for all funds, 96.4 million. I've got a couple of slides relative to the general fund, And you'll note that the state of Minnesota provides about 73% of our revenue. The federal aid we receive, when originally budgeted, was about 2.2% of our budget, and other fees and local revenue, about 3.4% of our budget. Property taxes in the general fund only make up 21.6% of the budget. On the expenditure side, this pie chart really explains that we're people. If you add the salaries and wages of 58.6% to the employee benefits, 22.2%, you'll see that we're over 80% people. Purchase services, contractors, outsourcing, utilities, those account for about 10% of our budget. Supplies and materials, only 2.5%. And with projects we've got upcoming in this school year, about 6% for capital expenditures, and debt service within the general fund, only 0.3%. Other expenditures, 0.1%. So that gives you a little picture of our operating funds and our general fund budget relative to revenues and expenditures. We'll shift gears now and go into the property tax levy portion, and we'll talk a little bit about how the levy was determined, how it compares to last year, and any reasons for changes in the tax levy, and ultimately the impact that we see on taxpayers. And again, I want to make mention to folks that if you'd like to provide a comment, please send an email to feedback@flaschools.org, and your email is going to be read aloud during our comment period. So, a little bit on property tax background. Every owner of taxable property pays taxes to various jurisdictions: the county, the city, the school district, special districts in which they're located. Each jurisdiction sets the tax levy, often based on limits in law. And the county is the agent that collects the taxes from the owners and distributes it back to other taxing jurisdictions. Here's an example of a notice that most folks received just after Thanksgiving. Folks in the various counties were a little late this year, but they did get them off on or before November 24th. And these notices compare property taxes that are proposed for 2021 with what was actual in 2022. School districts are actually broken out into two categories in the middle of these documents. Each school district could levy taxes in up to 40 different categories, but almost all of them are set by state law. You can have increases for voter-approved referenda that are operating funds in the general fund or additional debt service dollars for bonding and construction. But the MDE calculates levy maximums for every school district. Now, there's several steps that affect the taxes of parcels, but the school district only has control over one of the steps. Now, these 7 steps you see in this slide. Step 1 is the assessor determining market value. In step 2, the legislature is setting formulas for tax capacity, and the county auditor then calculates the capacity for each parcel in the county or each property. The legislature sets formulas which determine the school district levy limits, and the Minnesota Department of Education then does detailed levy limits for each school district based on the formulas. Now, in step 6, the school board adopts a proposed levy in September based on those limits from step 5. And then after the public hearing, which we're going to conduct this evening, the board can adopt a final levy later this evening at its regular school board meeting. The final levy, though, cannot be more than the proposed amount unless we had a voter-approved referendum. Finally, the county auditor divides the final levy as determined in step 6 that we just described, and then puts the tax rate needed for all properties. What we've done as a school district is on September 17th, we've approved the proposed levy amount. Then the county mailed out the statements. This evening, we're going to hold this hearing, and following the hearing at tonight's regular meeting, the school board will consider certifying the final levy amount. The taxes for 2021 have increased by about 2.9%. And I'll go through the major increases and decreases in the levy on the following slides. Here's a detailed look at each of the levy categories that Forest Lake Area School District qualifies for and has dollar amounts in. And so of the taxes that go into the general fund, recall they're not even 20%. They're less than that. But we do have an increase of about $661,000 in the general fund, a decrease in community services of about $386,000, and then increase in the debt service fund of about $529,000. So overall, we've got an $805,942 increase. It's a 2.9% change, but we'll go through some of these in greater detail on the next couple of slides. Now, long-term facility maintenance revenue has decreases in the general fund and also increases in the debt service fund. We're eligible for LTFM revenue based on state-approved project costs. So work we're going to do on the Central Learning Center, work we've done on other buildings in the past, they qualify for long-term facilities maintenance revenue. Now, these levies are coordinated with other capital and debt levies, and we use Ehlers and Associates to help us with maintaining a level tax rate for all of our levies. In the general fund, relative to our athletic fields project, there's an increase of $526,000 for an instructional lease. This amount's based on estimated cost of already state-approved instructional lease costs. Later in this school year, probably in January, we'll be talking with Ehlers and Associates about certificates of participation that will be paid for using this instructional lease. Those certificates of participation will provide the funds to work on our multi-use outdoor facilities that are going to be constructed this spring. We also have prior year adjustments. In the general fund, we've got an increase of about $615,000. It's a combination of enrollment, other values, and expenditures. And these estimates are updated, and levies then are retroactively adjusted. Adjustments in the LTFM program that we talked about a couple slides back are a large positive amount for taxes payable in 2021, but they were a large negative amount for last year's taxes. In Community Services Fund, the School Age Care Child Services for students with disabilities is being reduced by about $250,000. The initial levy amount is based on estimated costs, and these are expected to be going down for taxes payable in 2021. So those are the significant items within our changing property taxes, but there are a lot of factors that can impact individual taxpayers' school taxes. The value of an individual property may be increasing faster or decreasing faster than others surrounding it. Change in the total value of all property throughout the district. All property throughout the district increased by far more than 3%. Increases or decreases in levy amounts and state funding formulas or other factors, as you see on this slide. I've got a 4-year school levy comparison, and the following slides, first is a chart with all of the detail. Hopefully all the board members received a PDF format of this, because I'm not going to go over that chart in any great detail. But the table itself shows school district taxes only, and it is examples based on no changes in property values. And we know that the property values over time do rise, but it is providing a representation of what happened to various district property over commercial and for district properties that are residential homestead. I'm really excited that we've also got some data from the Washington County Board Workshop on November 17th, since this data is based on no change in property values. These specific examples are from the city of Forest Lake, and they were prepared by Ehlers and Associates. Here's the chart that I made mention of, and I've got examples shown for residential homestead and for commercial industrial. And you can see with fixed market value what those taxes are over time. But here's an actual graphic representation of $250,000 residential homestead property on the left, or a $500,000 residential homestead property on the right. And you can see taxes in a typical $250,000 residential homestead property, $1,024 last year, and that represents about a third of the total tax. $1,003 for 2021 as an estimate, and likewise for the $500,000 residential homestead property on the right. Here we have two examples of commercial industrial property, $500,000 or $3 million. And in the case of a $3 million commercial industrial property, taxes in 2020 were $14,420. And the estimate for that same market value would be $14,406 in 2021. Now, of course, we know that tax values are increasing. And our goal as a school district, with all the projects that we had, was to ensure that our tax rates declined. This is a chart from the Washington County Board Workshop. This was held November 17th, just before the tax notices went out. And this is after the auditor has spread all of the tax rates. And you'll notice in the top chart from 2020, Forest Lake has a tax capacity rate of 25.096% and a referenda rate of 0.1734. Those are higher than the 2021 rates for Forest Lake. The tax capacity at 24.95% and the referenda rate 0.1666. Those are the two largest drivers of our tax rates. And also the debt rate is lower. So we've achieved our goal. Those tax rates, while they're shown for Washington County, are actually also the exact same tax rates in our Chisago properties and our Anoka County properties, because the tax rate is the same throughout the entire school district. As an added benefit, Washington County maps the data and shares with folks the number of properties that have an increase and the number of properties that have a decrease. So this chart, if you look at the Forest Lake line, indicates that the median taxable market value now in Forest Lake within Washington County, $299,700. And the average change in taxable market value, or the median change, was up 1.6%. The median change in school tax was actually down $3, down 0.3%. And over the 6,800 properties throughout the school district, 3,707 of them did not increase. 3,053 of them had an increase. So I think that data is very helpful in identifying the fact that we've met our goal in holding the line on taxes as we're undertaking these projects. Now, after a few more slides, we'll be in our comment portion of our hearing. So just as a reminder, if you'd like to have your comments read aloud during that period, send an email to feedback@flaschools.org. The last few slides I have speak to some property tax refund mechanisms. One of them is the circuit breaker. This has been around since the 70s. Both property tax refunds are accomplished by completing the state tax form M1PR. This one has some limits, and there is also a special property tax refund. It's available to owners of homestead properties that increase at least 12% and more than 100 in the first year. This is often helpful for folks that have conducted referenda, and there are no income limits for this, but again, it's that state form M1PR. And finally, there is a senior citizen property tax deferral that people should be aware of. People 65 and older, household income of 60,000 or less, lived in and owned the homesteaded property for the last 15 years, you can qualify for a tax deferral. Now, the deferred taxes plus accrued interest ultimately are paid when the home is sold. So the next steps, the board will accept public comments on our proposed levy, and then later this evening at the regular school board meeting, we'll certify the property tax levy. And so at this time, I would ask if there's any questions from the school board members, we can answer those questions. But for the hearing portion or the comment portion, that's really just to take public comment.
Member Rayfield?
So, Director Martini, it does seem like we're in pretty good health financially, especially given the crazy circumstances of this year. Would that be your assessment?
Yes, absolutely. I've got additional information that wasn't necessarily presented here. We've got a wonderful audit that you'll see in a couple of weeks, and then presented at the January school board meeting. As we've undertaken this year, as I mentioned, enrollment's better than projected, and we've got some adjustments to the general fund budget that are positive in nature, and so I think we're doing very well. Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? We currently have no public comments, but we will wait the required 10 minutes for folks who wanted to submit something. Member Tyson?
Thanks, Member Chair. Larry, I just wanted to comment on, what an excellent detailed report, first of all. But, and that's such good news on the residential property taxes as well. When you talked about the 2.86 increase this year, how does that compare to last year? If you were to look at last year's, or do you recall?
So at our finance committee meeting a couple of weeks back, we actually had looked at that same data, because we can get really comprehensive data from Washington County, and we normally get comprehensive data from Anoka County. Anoka County is a little bit behind this year, and even this evening I checked their website. We still don't have that type of detail that I presented from Washington County. But last year's increase was a little over 3%. And so with Ellers helping us with trying to meet this target, we knew we needed to be under 3%, because last year I think the data in general would have been reversed. A little more than half of our properties had an increase, and a little less than half had a decrease. And our target was to be lower tax rates and be able to say that on average, folks saw a tax decrease, albeit small, like the $3 we just shared.
Great. Thank you, Larry.
Do we have any other questions or comments for Director Martini?
Just for filling in the time, because I know sometimes waiting the full 10 minutes is quite a bit of time. I should share with you that I think in the last 7 years, we have had no comments, but if we go back an 8th year, we've had residents other than employees attend. They didn't choose to comment, but they had questions. And some of those questions were actually related to having hangars at the airport, and curious how that worked and how of those, taxes worked. So we've been able to help folks, whether it's myself and Chrissy Renberg, or myself and Paula Steele, myself and Deb Meyer, over time, help those residents. But for Forest Lake, it's really been rare when we've had a comment or folks speak up at a tax hearing here. That's a real rarity.
Well, I think it's a testament to the good work that's being done to make sure that taxes stay in check, which is important to everybody.
If there aren't questions from the board, I can fill some of this silence with just a quick reference. And Mr. Martini referenced this in his presentation. And tonight you're going to be approving the bid process for the athletic stadium project. That project is to a large extent baked into this next year's expenditures and taxation. And with that on board, as we've said from day one, that project will not raise taxes on the local property owners and business owners in the district. And not only that, but other projects and taxation issues going on in the district, none of those are resulting in an increase to local property taxes. That's great news for the community, that we are able to use new funding sources and to be creative and time these projects in a way that sees some taxes decrease and then these taxes come on board, all in a manner in which doesn't raise property taxes. You'll recall in 2018, we passed our operating referendum, and that did show an increase in the property rate, but since then the rates have been going down. And this week, or this month, I should say, in the Forest Lake Times, I'm doing an update on our operating referendum and our commitments to those spending priorities that we spent so much time developing, and our commitment to honor those each year of the referendum. And we're in our second year, and we'll be entering our third year with those still squarely in our view and our commitments as a district.
That is fantastic, Dr. Massey, and I think that it shows and it proves the hard work of Director Martini and his crew, and how we are being very judicious with our community's money that they've given us for the projects that we've completed and that we're doing.
Yeah, you'll recall on the referendum that we made commitments to how we were going to spend those dollars. We campaigned on those, and then we built our next year's budget and future budgets with those commitments in line and honored at each year of the referendum. And as I said, we're in the second year. will be soon starting our budget considerations for the third year. And we will continue to honor those commitments each step of the way.
I just wanted to add one thing as a resident of Forest Lake and also Washington County. I got, as Larry mentioned, I got my proposed taxes for 2021 on our residents, and I'm pleased to say that as I read it, it decreased by almost 6%. So I'm a happy house owner here in Forest Lake, ideally spending 6% less on taxes than I did last year.
Well, and I just wanted to add one more thing, that the very exciting thing for me, and I had heard this, is that we had budgeted for student loss that was going to be higher, and we didn't hit that mark. So that's a real exciting point for our district. So just wanted to highlight that too.
If I could add from Director Dyson's comment right there, Joy Mouch actually compiles all the enrollment data monthly from all the schools. So we just looked at our December data again, and we'll look again at January. And we had an increase from our November numbers. So things are really exciting in that aspect. It is something we really focus on because most of our money is generated on a per pupil basis, and our ability to track that closely and monitor it, our willingness of all the administrators to talk to families that are thinking about change and to engage families. It's been an outstanding effort over the last couple of years that has truly paid off.
And I would say that a great marketing plan is important, but a great marketing plan doesn't sell schools. What happens inside of our schools is what sells schools. And there's just exceptional programming that raises student achievement, engages kids with caring adults that build strong relationships. And when that happens, kids come to the district, but they also stay in the district. So it's about building a solid foundation and a solid system that we have done for years and years. And, you know, we're reaping the benefits of those experiences, and families talk. And when word gets around and people realize that this is a premier school district, it's a place people want to be.
All right, fellow members of the board, we have received no public comments. So 10 minutes have expired. This time I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of, Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Are we adjourning or, okay, not just postponing?
No, we're adjourning the Truth and Taxation meeting. We'll convene a new meeting at 7.
Okay. Then Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Olson is at, Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson.
Aye.
Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson.
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. And Member Corcoran is absent. Unless she snuck in? Nope. Okay.
Nope, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.